All right, guys. Well, good afternoon, evening, right before supper time for us here. Thank you guys for joining us tonight for what is sure to be a really interesting and fun professional development webinar with Michelle Cummings. For those of you who have not had the pleasure of meeting either virtually or in person, my name is Amanda Stickelbauer and I work with SC Economics. I'm also a classroom econ teacher at Blythewood High School in Richland School District 2. And it is my pleasure to have worked with Michelle for, I don't know, Michelle, 5 or 6 years. Michelle is one of the first friends I met working with SC Economics. So Michelle is an econ and government teacher, both AP and college prep level at West Florence High School. And Michelle is in our first cohort, our gold level of South Carolina Financial Literacy Master Teachers. She is going to give a wonderful presentation tonight about how to gamify your econ and personal finance classrooms. And I know that you guys and I am really looking forward to learning some new things tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Michelle.
Hi, good evening. So the link that I shared in the chat, you guys might find it really beneficial to go ahead and open that link. It's also here on the screen. We're going to do a lot of stop and start where you guys can go explore the resources that I'm sharing, and all of them are going to be linked in the slideshow tonight. So you might as well just make yourself a copy of the Google Slides now. I am on dog duty tonight. My husband had to go to a meeting across town. So if I randomly get up in the middle, it's because they've decided that now must be the time they have to go outside. So just giving you guys a heads up. But with that, we're going to get started. So this is all about gamification. I love games and simulations and hands-on activities in econ, especially with those difficult topics. So these are tried and true things that I've done in my classroom for years now. Some of them I've adapted for my own students, and some of them I took them straight off of a website and I haven't adapted them since. So these are all things that I have tested in multiple classes. And just like everything, some classes respond better and some classes respond worse, but I at least know I'm going to have fun the day that I do them. Whether the kids get on board or not is totally up to them. Amanda did a great job of already introducing me. The only thing I have to add is I have 2 Boykin Spaniels. I am a transplant from Ohio, but I jumped on the South Carolina state dog bus real quick, and we have Oakley, who's 10, and then Boozle, who is 2. So those are our family kids at the moment. All right, the first thing I wanted to introduce you guys to, obviously, hopefully you guys are all familiar with the standards. I am working straight out of the economics and personal finance standards that were college and career ready for 2019. Specifically, we are looking at standard 1. We're looking at all the standards, but I put the indicators that I'm working on specifically tonight for my activities that I'm sharing. And then, as always, you have the ability to look at your standards. And then the second thing I wanted to share tonight that maybe you might not be familiar with is our inquiry units that were developed right when COVID started. So March of 2020, May of 2020, these standards or these inquiry units take the standards and basically create unit lesson plans for you that are a little bit more student-led, student-driven. Amanda and I were both part of the team that developed these inquiry units, and I would say 90% of my class is based on these 4 units. For me, they're like really ready to go, and you just need to plug and chug the different preps. So if you're looking to do a little bit more student-led instruction in economics, I cannot recommend these inquiry units enough. And honestly, these inquiry units do allow for me to have more games and simulations and competitions in my classroom. So the link at the top will take you to the inquiry units where you can see the 4 units. We have basics of economics for unit 1, unit 2 is personal finance. Unit 3 is microeconomics. And then unit 4 is macroeconomics. And I even give you an example of the basics of econ unit. So if you want to take the opportunity right now, it does download as a Word document. But if you want to take a hot second to look at that Word document, if you have not seen the inquiry units before. Hopefully that gave you guys enough time to explore. If not, I recommend bookmarking this and coming back to it if you're looking to change your econ ways. All right, the first lesson that I would like to talk about tonight is the very first lesson I do in my econ classes, and it is called Build a Zoo. So what I've provided for you guys in the links here is my 2 versions of the activity. I have a print activity, and that's that first one. It's a handout I printed out for the students. And I put students in teams of anywhere from 2 to 4. We have tables in my classroom, so typically they just work within their table groups. And then they each get a copy of the handout. I also have a virtual digital option because I'm sure, like all of us, we've adapted digitally the last year and a half, 2 years. But this one explains scarcity. So students are given a list of animals in a zoo, and they have, I do 20 acres in my zoo. And so they have to fill their zoo with all the animals, but there's scarcity involved, right? There's opportunity costs. They can only choose so many animals. They can't fit them all. They have other options like a playground, a restaurant, all sorts of things. I always tell the kids, like, make sure you pay attention to what animals you put next to each other, because you definitely don't want the prey and the predator next to each other unless you do. So the kids get to choose and design their zoo. I add incentive to it by making it a competition between my classes, and the best zoo in each class, those group members get like a small $5 Chick-fil-A gift card. That's just the way that I incentivize, and it always works. I think one semester I did have kids possibly pay off the other class to vote for them, but I mean, I guess all is fair in competition. So my students really like that, but I do again have the digital version that I've had just each student design their zoo. I don't give a lot of structure or rules to this, except that they have to fill the zoo up. And that usually takes us, we're 90 minutes. This usually takes us, it's the first day of class. So I skip the syllabus, I skip all the things, and we jump right into this activity. And it usually takes us the first day and a half. In years past, I've also set time limits where I'm like, you have 45 minutes to complete this. They responded well to that and got it done in 45 minutes. We had a countdown timer on the board. So it's kind of whatever you have built in your schedule, the kids will adapt and adjust to the rules. And then the optional thing that I've included, I personally don't use it, but it gives an explanation to each of the discussion questions on the handout. So like, what is scarcity? What is opportunity cost? What is this sort of there is no such thing as a free lunch. So it does a great job of introducing those big key econ vocab. And like I said, this is day 1, week 1. We're jumping in. This is how I introduce kids to econ and kind of show them that economics doesn't need to be scary when we talk about it. And hopefully that while I was jabbering, you guys had the opportunity to look at the links that I provided. The second lesson, I do this less in my honors classes, and I see this more in my AP classes, is this cookie trade. It's based on comparative advantage. This activity involves a lot of prep. I usually, now I can just whip out my file folder and I've got Ziploc bags labeled and it's ready to go. because I've learned how to pack it up correctly. But the first couple of times it does take a lot of prep. And every time I do it, I have to remind myself, okay, this is round one, this is round two. But the idea is students have to learn how to trade. They have to learn what happens when one person's good at producing one part of the ingredient list versus the other. They talk about trade-offs. Why are chocolate chips worth more than butter? So students usually, I keep them in duos in my classes to make sure that they're communicating with each other. There is an optional worksheet that goes with it, but you could easily just do the cookie trade. Something I've noticed, my students are always like, why didn't you bring us cookies when it was all over? Some years I have brought them cookies, and then other years I totally forget. But the prep is worth it to me. It does end up taking the whole 90 minutes for my class because they work through it. In addition to comparative advantage, they also have to be familiar with the production possibilities curve. So I use this as like the segue between the PPC and comparative advantage, where they've maybe heard about comparative advantage and they've seen it on the PPC, but now we're showing it in real life. And I've noticed it helps them understand comparative advantage and absolute advantage a little bit better, especially for my AP macro students. I haven't tried it in all my honors classes for any reason except that typically I have kids who take my AP class who are also in my honors classes. And I don't want them to beat the system and win the game because they already know the answers. But I don't see why I couldn't do this in my honors classes. And again, like I've got the lesson plan. I think I threw one as a PDF and then I think one is a worksheet. But again, like you print off this lesson plan and it's ready to go. You just need to make sure that you read it and you make the appropriate copies for your students. The third lesson is probably one that we're all familiar with, or at least we've heard of it. It's the Pearl Exchange game. I use this at the end of my supply and demand unit. Again, this can take all 90 minutes or it can take 45 minutes. I give you an example video and an example worksheet that does match the video from Jacob Clifford. However, I also included the worksheet that I use, and I think my husband adopted. My husband is also a social studies teacher, so a lot of times we steal from each other. And the Pearl Exchange game, it's been around forever, but my husband is the one who introduced me to it. And he's the one that helps me every year when I'm like, I'm teaching the Pearl Exchange game. Please remind me of the minimum and the maximum and the numbers I need to have. But my students love this game. So the concept is you've got buyers and you've got sellers and they meet in the market, which is in your room, and they have to argue back and forth and come up with a price that they agree on. They make a trade. Each pair of students is making different trades. And then you're recording the trades, the agreements on the board each round. Depending on how much your kids like to adapt and play, some rounds I'll have more buyers than sellers. So some people will not be able to make a deal. Sometimes I make sure it's lined up perfectly because they're a little bit too antsy when they don't match up. But the idea is that after 4 rounds, you've got a clear winner who's got a ton of surplus because they made the best deals in the game. And it shows them things like equilibrium price, especially when you change the minimum number and the maximum number each round. Some rounds I keep them super close together where it's like $20 and $40. And so the deals are really hard. And then sometimes I give them $5 to $500 to see who's the better swindler of getting their way. So again, this game gets them up, it gets them moving. It is quite loud. I've had admin walk in during observations and be like, I had no idea what was going on. And I also didn't understand what they were saying. So I guess there was learning. And that's just, and it's one of those things where the kids are so into the game, you can have your back to the class writing on the whiteboard and you know exactly what they're saying. Cause you could be like, no, I said $25, not $24.50. So they love it. And then the fourth activity, this one's actually online and My AP students are the one who found it years ago, and I now use it not only in my AP class, but I use it in my regular econ classes. It's called Fiscal Ship, and it can be a doozy of a game. You can have kids try to get it done in 15 minutes, but I've had kids sit for 90 minutes just trying to get their budget, their deal. So I've used this game in not only my econ classes, but my government classes, because it's all about policy and keeping your, why did I just blank, your budget afloat. Econ EdLink does have a great lesson plan that helps you walk through how to teach it to the students. Or if you're like me, you just send them the link and tell them to have at it and have some reflection questions at the end. The kids typically like the demo at the bottom, and I've screenshotted what Fiscal Ship looks like for you. And then also if you click the photo, it will open the game for you. And this is just one of those games that kids love. There used to be another game that did monetary policy, but it was Chair the Fed, but they took Chair the Fed down. So here's to hoping it comes back soon. But like I said, new game. I always tell the kids, if they're not comfortable with Fiscal Ship, it'll pick their tasks for them. And the idea is not only you have to keep your budget afloat, but you have to get stars on all of your plans, and you have to make sure that you're not drowning in debt. And so there's a lot of steps. And I always tell my students, if they got overwhelmed with how much they have to do, to focus on one thing at a time. Maybe it's keeping their budget balanced, maybe it's staying out of debt. Pick one, do it. And like I said, you could say, hey guys, you have 15 minutes, do the best you can, or keep going until you feel happy that you've gotten 3 stars and a rainbow, and there's just all sorts of things. And so just know that some kids will want to go all the way, and you might be like, we gotta go. So that's Fiscal Ship. The next thing is, I'm hoping you might know Next Gen Personal Finance, but if not, I'm a big fan of Next Gen Personal Finance for all of my personal finance lessons. I think I spend a bulk of my personal finance unit in Next Gen, because not only can you create a free account and gain access to all of the answer keys, but you have access to ready-made lessons that just involves going in, doing file, make a copy, and then sending it into Google Classroom to your students. There's not a lot of adapting or adjusting. And so the access to that, I use NextGen for everything, but the big thing I use it for is the arcade games. So I've set up a game for you guys to go ahead and play the Uber game if you've never played it before. But basically each arcade game can take 5 to 30 minutes. Each game comes with a ready-to-go lesson plan. So what I've included for you guys is not only the link to play the game, but the worksheet that you can post straight into your learning mode, so Google Classroom or Canvas, and it's ready to go for the students. So I invite you to sort of take a break now and go and play the Uber game and come back in maybe like 15 minutes, just so we can decompress and see how you guys did. See if you made it as an Uber driver in San Francisco, I think. plan to get back together between 6:30 and 6:35, but feel free to play the game, answer the questions as you go to sort of get into the perspective of what your students will be expected to know. hopefully you guys have wrapped up the game. One of the things I liked about the Uber game is that it gives you a breakdown after you finish about how you did compared to other players. And then it also gives the kids the opportunity to do hard or easy mode. So that way kids can pick what works best for them. And obviously I played it while you guys were playing it as well. The other thing is if you guys click the link to Next Gen Personal Finance, I link it not only to the website, which I think I've said I'm a very big fan of, but the one thing I do want to show you is their arcade. And you can see there's so many game options, and each of them comes with a reflection worksheet, and each of them comes with a time limit about how long it should take you. The one game that my kids played, we played all of them last quarter and last semester. The one that my kids ended up loving the most was this cat insanity game, which basically you have to make sure that you don't kill cats. But the kids loved it. It was quick. It was a little bit crazy. But there's lots of games, lots of topics that you guys can get into. And I have a great time doing all of the games in my class. And so I am going to hop back to my slideshow. And I'm not going to print it. But this is sort of the end of the presentation for me. I finished a lot sooner than I anticipated, but I hope this gives you guys enough to actually go into your lesson plans and look about how you can adapt. I know for my school, we're starting Q4, which means I'm starting econ March 21st. So this would definitely be something that I would want to sit down and look and see how can I incorporate some more of these games. If I can recommend one thing, even if you are like in the heart of your econ classes, I would say go ahead and take time, if you haven't done it, to do Build the Zoo. It's just a really good team building activity, but the kids really like to visually see like what it means to make choices and scarcity and all of that. But I'm going to leave this slide up as if you guys have any questions about any of the things that I shared, or if you want me to go back to any of the previous slides, or if you need a link to something. I guess now is the great time if you have questions that I can answer, that I could help you so that transition into your classroom is smooth.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And you guys can absolutely continue to ask questions. Erica, I will tell you that we played the influence game like at the end of the first semester, and the kids really liked it. They have to figure out like how to be an influencer. It's kind of popular with kids right now.
None of them could make it. None of them liked
it. It's hard.
Yes. Oh, and I finally saw the comment. Yeah, Boozles too, and still very hyper. We had to go outside and play.
So I am providing a link in the chat box to the evaluation for tonight's webinar. And then as Michelle has listed here, on the slide, what she has listed is a completely different evaluation form. For those of you who are not familiar with this, we talk about this at the end of most of our webinars, but you as a teacher, classroom teacher, are eligible, having attended this webinar by Financial Literacy Master Teacher, to teach a follow-up lesson with your students. The ones for gamification are really simple to do. So go and play Cat Insanity or the Uber game with your kiddos. Collect a couple of pieces of evidence from them. What did they learn? And, what were your learning targets? What did you do in your lesson? and you can earn $100. So I know that those little incentives really matter. Some of you are probably attending 5 of these webinars during the spring to earn $100. But this is just another way to further incentivize teachers to incorporate more financial literacy in their classrooms as well. This form has to be completed by April 30th in order to qualify. But the evaluation link that I posted in the chat box, this is kind of like your ticket to the 1 out of 5 for the webinar series this spring. And I'm happy to stay on and answer any questions that you guys might have about the Financial Literacy Master Teacher Program, the participation form, or really anything.